This is an anonymous poem about what it means to change the world. When I was a young man, I wanted to change the world. I found it was difficult to change the world, so I tried to change my nation. When I found I couldn't change the nation, I began to focus on my town. I couldn't change the town, and as an older man, I tried to change my family. Now, as an old man, I realize the only thing I can change is myself. And suddenly I realized that if I long ago had changed myself, I could have made an impact on my family could have made an impact on our town, and their impact could have changed the nation. And I could indeed have changed the world. You see, true change begins at home. It begins with you and with me, but how do we change? Well, for Paul, and actually for the rest of the Bible for that matter, true change comes from the inside out rather than from the outside in. It comes from a change of heart rather than simply a change in behavior that is controlled by outward consequences. You see, we are changed by experiencing grace, not punishment. Love, acceptance, and forgiveness change the heart, and it causes it to trust, to follow, and repent. And this leads to far more lasting change than behavioral modification that redirects actions for a time. Now we see this in the key verse from Titus. This is from Titus chapter 2, verses 11 and 12. For the grace of God that brings salvation has appeared to all people, and it teaches us to say no to ungodliness and worldly passions, and to live self-controlled, upright, and godly lives in this present age. Now, Titus seems to be Paul's fixer, the guy he sends to communities when things are really out of control there. It's who he sent to Corinth, and now he sends Titus to Crete to sort things out. Now, listen to the description of the community from Eugene Peterson's translation, The Message. It says, there are lots of rebels out there, full of loose, confusing, and deceiving talk. Those who were brought up religious and ought to know better are the worst. They've got to be shut up. They're disrupting entire families with their teaching, and all for their sake of a fast buck. One of their own prophets said it best, the Cretans are liars from the womb, barking dogs and lazy bellies. He certainly spoke the truth. Get on them right away. Stop that diseased talk of Jewish make-believe and made-up rules. Okay, so clearly in this community, things needed to be sorted out. And the way that Titus is to do that is by teaching correct doctrine that leads to correct behavior. Paul starts the second chapter of Titus by instructing him to teach what is appropriate to sound doctrine or to sound teaching. And then he moves on to some very specific applications of how that would show up in our lives by being self-controlled, worthy of respect, not addicted to too much wine, showing integrity and self-control and other kinds of things. Basically, Paul says orthodoxy, right teaching, leads to orthopraxy, right living. Because the right teaching focuses on what Jesus has done and how we are forgiven and set free to live differently. As he says in chapter 3, the grace of God has appeared that offers salvation to all people. It teaches us to say no to ungodliness and worldly passions and to live self-controlled, upright, and godly lives in this present age. Grace teaches us to say no. Learning about and experiencing grace leads to a change of character, which leads to a lasting change of behavior. So the question for you today, and maybe over this weekend, is how will you focus on grace? Both for your own life so that it can lead to reshaping the way that you follow Christ, but then also how will it lead you to think about leading others, experiencing and giving grace to them to help reshape the way that they live.